Hello and welcome to Betting Clever episode 72. My name's Peter Ling and I'm your host. I'm going to be joined today by my partner in crime, Josh Holloway, to talk about everything to do with betting from a sharp betting perspective. As ever with these Betting Clever episodes, our goal is to give you the unvarnished opinion and information. There's no bookmaker sponsorship or advertising. It's purely from the perspective of if you are a winner or an aspiring winner, we're here to give you the intelligence to help you with that. So let's bring in Josh. Josh, like I say, my partner in crime, betting wise. We're recording this as Cheltenham is taking place. We're going to release the podcast a week or so later, but how is horse racing for you at the moment from a perspective? Because it's in the news at the moment. I'm keen to know, is it more? Is it less? Are you about the same as what you've always been betting on horse racing?
After today, not going so well. Not had a very good second day at the Cheltenham Festival after an okay start. Yeah, it's a sport that still makes up the majority of my betting purely for the fact that you can get money down. There's lots of different independent events. So if you can find 4 or 5 value bets over a week, that's generally what I do. And then with the tipsters and stuff we use, it's something where I can get quite a lot of my volume down on a regular basis. So yeah, for me, still taking up the majority of my betting, but whether that will be the case moving forward, I'm not sure because it's getting harder and harder. How about yourself, Pete?
Yeah, so I think over the 20 or so years that I've been betting extensively, horse racing's been a part of that, but it's ebbed and flowed, as different strategies and angles and tipsters or whatever you do, it's always been periods where it's been a lot more than it is. But right now, I think that it's less than it's ever been. We're doing a few bits and pieces on it and they're going quite well, but yeah, it's less than it's ever been. And I think the biggest barrier is that of affordability, deposit limits. We've done a podcast, we've done material on like the 5 stages of betting, from someone who's a beginner through to betting with, your soft bookmakers and then all the way up to being exchanges and sharps and what have you. And I'm at that far end. So it becomes quite difficult when you're limited to what you can get into an account. It could be £500. It could be, some of these arbitrary limits. And then you have to try and prove your income. Well, at that point, they're not going to let you be a customer when they see your bank account. And there's no regular wage coming in from Barclays or whoever it might be, a big employer. So it's quite difficult, I think. And it just made me think about racing and betting because obviously racing is so linked in with betting. And a lot of debate, Cheltenham and beyond, about how it's impacting. I was reading about the black market. We both read the article in the Daily Mail. It said 4% from last year, the 4% of the turnover in terms of racing was black market. And I think it's going to be a lot bigger. You look at owners, for example, look at just people who are relative bets in 50s or 100s. They can't get on. They might put £250 on a horse and they would not really worry about it. That's within the realms of what they can afford. Of course, there's those people who can't afford it and they're betting too much. But those people, they're either going to stop betting altogether, or if they're like me, they're just, not like me, but if they're going to keep betting, but they'll likely keep betting with black market firms because there's no friction there, isn't there? I'm curious to see what that market growth figure will be like this year.
Yeah, I think, 4% is the latest figure, isn't it? That's from YieldSec, who are experts in this area, and that's doubled in the last few years. So anyone who's looking at trends, they can see that coming. Everything that we've seen from the white paper and the way that bookmakers are behaving around affordability suggests that's going to grow further. I think we both listened, didn't we, to the recent Racing Post piece with the Post bookmakers?
Yes.
What he was doing there, I didn't understand their business plan, to be honest, because the people you're talking about there, the owners, some sharp business who want to get bets down, they don't need to get the best price on Oddschecker. They'll probably take 7-4, about a 2-1, or maybe even lower. They just want to be able to get on without any frills. And I think they're offering deposit matches and stuff like that. So that was an example of a very naive black market bookmaker. I think it doesn't take too much brains to be able to create an operation that could really sweep up a lot of this business. I think I've heard the point made, definitely by James Knight. I think AK might have talked about it in the past before as well, that these black market bookies have so fewer costs than the regulated firms with stuff like media rights, the levy, having to have all these compliance people working for them. So it's a perfect storm. And I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff coming out from Will Petraska and Gambling with Lies, but these people are very much setting the weather on this debate and they're going to cause quite a lot of damage. I've got no doubt about that, but we'll see what comes out.
Yeah, because that yield sec said there was 231 illegal operators in 2023 in the black market. No doubt there's hundreds of mirror sites, different servers. You don't have to be Columbo to figure out how to find a black market bookmaker. I went on Google, put in a couple of Google searches. You can think of them yourself. And so much came up. And they're not just directing you to a specific black market bookmaker. They're directing you to lists or collections of top 30 bookmakers, top 30 offshore, top 30 black market, top 30, non-GAMSTOP. There's all these firms that are out there and these sites, and very, very hard to manage and to close down. And how do people transact money? Well, they probably send crypto, don't they? And how can you manage crypto? You can't. That we already know that. For me, it's not the number of people that likely is betting as much as the size of those bets and the amount of money, because it's those big punters, I think, that are going to really... Well, might as well. I work with a lot of sharp bettors, right? I look sharp betting groups, and none of them would ever use the black market because they know they're not going to get paid. You stick in a large sum of money as your bankroll into an account, you're probably not going to see that back, let alone any profits. But if you're a losing punter or just not somebody who's particularly sharp, you stick in your money and you might have a win. You might back a 2-to-1 shot and have $1,000 on it. And you think, great, I've won $2,000, and they'll pay you out probably because they think, well, do you know what? This kind of punter will give it all back in the end. I mean, there's still a chance you won't get paid, and that's the risk you take. But I just feel that it's going to be interesting to see the impact on a sport like racing, especially when, it relies on bookmaker turnover to keep it going.
Yeah. I think the real danger comes, Pete, when a black market firm starts acting honourably, if you like, with paying customers out and getting a good reputation. So, like I was saying then, their operating costs, their overheads are so much lower. All it takes is a couple of decent black market firms to offer prices and get a reputation for paying out. That's when the real trouble comes, because people will be loyal to them and there'll be no reason then for people to bet with regulated firms. At the moment, people are very hesitant. I mean, I wouldn't do it, because of some of the horror stories, the likes of which Luke Patton uncovered when he did his stuff with the Curacao firms. When we get somebody who's got a reputation for paying out, that's going to be when we're in real trouble. And you want to cry when you listen to some of the people who argue against this and say, we're going to bring in a new mechanism through the Justice and Crime Bill to give the Gambling Commission power to deal with this. I mean, Xi Jinping's China can't stop these firms from getting in and turning over the vast majority of their gambling revenue. The idea that the Gambling Commission are going to be better than them at intelligence and monitoring their population is it's for the birds. It's absolute madness. I don't know. What can you say?
Well, I mean, that generally impacts bigger punters, perhaps, like people that are big bankrolls especially, or have been closed down. But if you are listening to this and you are somebody who bets and you do enjoy it, there is things you can do, right? So you can spread your bets around different bookmakers. You can spread your bankroll around. You've done a lot of work on listing so many different firms that are in the UK. Okay, we all know the Oddschecker guys, and we're going to talk about Oddschecker today. But what about outside of that? There's at least 64 that we've found so far. Some of them are offer the same odds as other firms. So it's really easy to correlate what the prices are. So there's legitimate firms, all regulated, that will pay you out. So if you are at that frustrated point about, Bet365 has shut me down, or I can't get enough money into this account, do bear that in mind, because they don't necessarily check with each other how much you deposited. So it's the best way at the moment. And let's talk about racing then, because we have actually betting on racing, because we have a racing tips to profit report out at the moment. That's a keen focus on racing. We've got that out ahead of Cheltenham. But I know you talked about day 2 at Cheltenham being bad, but we never like to... reactionary to one day and if a favourite fell or not.
No.
But so the goal is obviously to make money throughout the year. And we've got a lot of, I was looking at it before, we've got a lot of services that, we've got a guy that's Optimum Racing that's been doing it for 25 years. And there's not the only one. Just like those services that continue to tick over. And the first point I wanted to talk about are those services that evolve. System Analyst is one that we've highlighted as well a fair bit. It's one of our Hall of Fame services. And what I like about him, Josh, is that he previously, back in, say, 2010, he was putting up bets that would be, say, it's just 7-1 with 4 firms that are available on Oddschecker. And no one was complaining, I can't get on. They've limited me. I can't deposit any more money. People are getting on, fine. But nowadays, he's adapted and evolved it. So it's all, he's just brought in an exchange service, which is based on the bets within the 5 minutes prior to the off. The price is there in the Betfair market. So if it meets the minimum guide price, it's considered a bet. If it doesn't, it's not. So it's evolving with the industry. You can't be a tipster, a racing tipster, and to be taken seriously if you're going to put up bets at 6 p.m. the night before with Bet365, can you?
No. I mean, I was looking at some of Sys Analyst's messages yesterday because they've been running a promotion for our members. he was loath to put up Irish point each way because of the reaction of the bookmakers. And coincidentally, I don't think it would have been an issue because it's Cheltenham week and they're probably going to take that action and just let it go. But that was just an example of how he thinks so much about how his customers are impacted by bookmaker restrictions and how bookmakers will react to certain bets. I mean, he goes against my prior thinking about value and getting value before the price shortens on exchanges and stuff. So it's been a real eye-opener for me watching those bets come in and how profitable they've been since. Is it September we've been proofing them since, Pete?
The exchange ones, yeah. So I think there's been maybe 900 bets, but could be right. I think 60% of them have been matched at value prices.
Yeah, I've got the number 541 lodged in my head for some reason. I don't know if that's from something else, but yeah, you know what we like with numbers. But yeah, like you say, adapting with the times, not pretending that betting 6 p.m. the night before is a viable strategy for more than 2 or 3 bets, and not going on social media and shouting boom when he has one winner. It's just not the way to act. It's not the way to think about making long-term profit. He does, and he knows exactly what he's doing. So somebody that we're glad to have on side with us, I think.
He would be somebody more that is your bigger punter. So probably stage 3 to 5. You have the bankroll to make it work because it isn't the cheapest. It doesn't pretend to be. But then if you are at a different point, there are tipsters that put up. We've had Andy Holding on the podcast recently. We've had Quentin Franks on in the past who put up about 9 a.m. Now, I've talked to Quentin about this, and I think we talked about it on the podcast, why 9 a.m? And he says, well, look, overnight, I'll identify, let's say I've got a short list of 20 horses. I can't bet overnight. And then in the morning, I might only have 10 at 9 a.m. But then by midday, I might only have 4. So for him, he found 9 a.m. was the sweet spot. You can get enough on, people can get enough on before all that value dissipates and goes and other people spot it. So that was him and his sweet spot. And like Andy puts up at 9 a.m. So, if you have bookmaker accounts, you're able to follow them. And then there's like no photo needed, aren't there? And some of those that bet for SP, aren't they, Josh? That just if you have those problems, you can bet a bit later on. Like Irish Cash Consortium, they've done really well lately at Betfair SP, haven't they?
Yeah, their record going back to when we started proofing them has been consistently good at Betfair starting price. So it's about having all this information at your fingertips. We say this to people all the time, don't we? That we're not going to tell you what to bet on. We're not going to tell you what to follow. It's about matching up what you've got available to you and what suits you, like workload and time.
Yeah.
And then matching that up to something which works for you. So you and I bet on completely different things apart from, I'd say, probably golf.
Yeah.
But that's because we've got like different interests. We've got different like time allowances and stuff. So yeah, it's about finding something that matches up, and having all this information is really key.
It is, yeah. And one Betfair SP tips that we put into the Hall of Fame this month in this report is Howard Duff Racing. I don't think we spoke about them before. It's actually somebody that owns horses off a syndication, or you can purchase a share in horses. But as well as that, he's had this betting service that's been going. It's just completed their 8th full season, so it works during the flat turf season. And their record is excellent. I mean, we're limited in terms of the number of bets, so we've had to wait a while from review, but we're at 25% ROI, 7 winning seasons out of 8. They also give you money back if you have a losing season. But best of all, they made a profit of that 25% at Betfair SP. So, and there are other services at Betfair SP or like system analysts that are working in the live market when there's liquidity. There's something for everybody, isn't there? You could follow Howard Duff, you can follow system analysts and various other ones at Betfair SP or in the live market. You can follow at 9 a.m. You can follow at midday. We haven't mentioned no photo needed, and some other services that tip up at midday when the market's even more bouncy. So there's different options depending upon where you are at your stage. And so if you are a horse trader, we started off on a bit of a downer there, but still, options to get on if you're interested in it, because, people say Cheltenham's lost its luster or it's not as busy. Well, it's still 60,000 people there every day. And it might be a small drop in terms of attendance, but that could be the cost of living more than anything. That could be the fact it's been pissing it down all week. There's many reasons.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen the car park in use, but you basically have to swim in and then get a tractor to pull you back out. So it's not been very good for followers in that regard. We're going to come on to someone in a sec, but I wanted to ask you about your Michael Parkinson act, because you've had a couple of really big interviews recently with Harry Stewart Moore and Andy Holding.
That's right, mate. Yeah, Harry was my first. He was episode 69. Yeah, that was a really good episode. I've heard Harry speak before. I met Harry actually last year, and he was on my panel at Smart Bash. Really good guy. I just thought he put across all the points that we have in such an eloquent way, an understandable way. Like the way he communicated the National Lottery and, the fact that that's not part of this remit to oversee gambling and gambling change. and the points he made about the information that's not provided by the Gambling Commission and his dealings with them. And he talked about separation of sports, casino style betting, all these points. I just thought, yeah, he was great. And then Andy was wonderful too. This is a guy, you're a big fan of Andy, and I'll let you talk a lot more about his service.
Yeah.
But, this is a guy who's at the top of his game. There's a lot of people in this industry, especially people in the commentary world, who talk a good game but don't actually live it out and walk it. He does both. And that comes across, we've done that analysis, didn't we? So he was nice to listen to, he knows his stuff, but he isn't just a talking head. He is somebody that can, if it wasn't for the betting industry as it is right now, he'd probably be still making a living purely from betting itself. So tell me about Andy, mate. You've been a member of his service and you've been the driving force behind that.
I think when I first came to, I just tried to say, for me, it's not about the tips with Andy's service. We can all understand that picking up tips at 8 o'clock in the morning and trying to get reasonable stakes onto them is tricky. For some people, it's impossible. So the reason why I love it so much, you get daily sheets sent through, or you can get them from the website. And like Andy said in his interview, it's just so much different from how everybody else talks about racing. It's very, very objective. So you add the subjective stuff on after about jumping and everything else. But when you're looking at, say, a jump race for Cheltenham or a flat race at Newcastle, it just gives you a numerical basis to start from. And for me, it's just massive. I remember when I first started out taking it really seriously, the person I read about most was Bill Benter.
Yeah.
So the guy who bet in Hong Kong. And Dundalk on a Friday night in the winter actually sets up some kind of conditions which are similar. So it's quite a small pool of horses. They often run against each other very often. Now, I know a lot of people will snigger when they hear Dundalk because it's not the most honest of racing, you could say, for anybody who watched Wrecking Ball Paul win by half the track last week. But it was just really good to be able to get that pool of horses and watch them each week and be able to work out what the factors were that were resulting in victory. So some of them might be really good at 6, but not so good at 7, vice versa.
Yep.
The draw and everything else. And having Andy's service and those sheets and then his Irish Racing podcast was just absolutely brilliant to be able to really build up my knowledge and how I bet on horse racing. So it's been the foundation of my success, and you can see why he's done so well. Just a really good judge. Great accent as well, Pete, as I'm sure you'll agree.
We're all about regional accents here, Josh. That's what we like. Yeah. Anything north of Northampton,
yeah, okay.
I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, so yeah, we not only did I have the pleasure of having Andy on the pod, we explored his service in depth. So you can, like I say, you can take it just for the tips, can't you? They perform 16% ROI, I think, or you can take all the other bits and pieces that you do. So you can really take as much as you want out of it. And I think 25 a month, I think it is, for SBC members.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real good price. Even if you just follow the tips, you don't need a huge bankroll for that. So yeah, Andy's great. But that segues us nicely onto his work at Oddschecker, because Andy is one of the key, used to be free tipsters at Oddschecker. And one of the things about Oddschecker, if you're not familiar with it, it's an odds comparison website. You can find all the latest odds on any particular market on there. So let's say at Cheltenham, you could go and look at the 330 or the Gold Cup or whatever and see, what the prices are and where to take the best price. So it's been a useful website, and it's basically built on eyeballs, right? It gets as many traffic as possible, and then they have advertising and revenue from the bookmakers. But they introduced a £10 a month charge for access to all of their tipsters, including Andy. Didn't stop you getting access to Andy's until later in the day. Like, you could get that for free. It just seemed for both of us like a really curious decision, didn't it, for Oddschecker's their business plan? It just made no sense.
Yeah, you likened it to Netflix, didn't you, when we first talked about it? And I think that's probably quite a good comparison, because that's what they're going for now. But these bookmakers and the exchanges, of course, pay north of 20 grand a month to be on that grid. You made this point as well, Pete, that they're going to have to get like north of 2,000 members just to cover that. And it seems really strange, because I think it's going to put people off using their site. You can still use the odds comparison part, but you can't look at price histories. And you obviously can't look at tipsters such as Andy or Niall Leon's. Is it Steve Ryder, the other chap?
Yeah.
And then they've got various group of football tipsters as well. It does seem like a really strange way to run things. I presumed that their business model was just purely built on that grid, and then also the affiliate click-throughs, which you'd imagine will drop if there's less eyeballs on the site. But what do you think is the kind of motivation there, Pete? What do you think's going on?
I think it's probably a bit of a cash grab. It seems like to me, they're just trying to get as much money as they can. Netflix's model, what is that, like between a £5 and a £10 a month? But how many members do they have?
Millions, yeah.
Millions, yeah. It's worth it for them. And let's say you bet 365 and you charge a £5 a month. Well, how many members do they have? How many people in the UK? They're going to make zillions as well. But if they're making 25 grand from a smaller bookmaker to be on their panel a month, they've got to get 2,500 people at a tenner a month. Now, it doesn't take into account the admin, the work involved, the server costs, the human costs to oversee it all, fees that you have to pay in payment, chargeback, all this kind of stuff. It's a lot of work that goes into it. It just makes no sense because the less people come to the website, the less impressions bookmaker have, the less traffic they get. So maybe the affiliation model is dying. I've heard it discussed as affiliation model. I don't know if it is so much that they just charge a fee to be on the panel. And the further you are to the left, and as the eye moves across, they're probably the more expensive you are. I think, is it the first firm, Bet365 from memory?
I've moved mine around because
okay.
Bet365. I think they are though. I think it is, and then I think it's like the likes of like William Hill, Sky Bet, Paddy Power, quite close to the left. But yeah, if you're Bet365 and you're getting 10 million impressions a month, and then they bring in this and it drops to 5 million impressions a month. Next year, when you're asked for your 40, 50 grand a month, you're going to say, well, wait a sec, I'm not paying that this year because the amount of people coming to the site has dropped off. So they could undermine both halves of their business, which would be even worse. But we'll wait and see. What do you think about the tipster side, Pete, as like somebody who proofs them? Do you think they can carry on as they are, just putting the tips out each week? Because there's not detailed records there, is there?
Well, that's the problem. I think if you're going to be putting and charging a fee for access to it and you're starting to, elevate them as people to follow, and the one positive, the less people on it, right? So if you've got someone like Andy, or especially Andy in the racing world, there is a move on his bets after they get put out. And there are going to be less people who are following that just because it's behind a paywall. So it's probably good for that, but then they don't publish results. So it's not good on that front. They're doing part of the work, but we know Andy is good because we've done the proofing and got the records of it, and we've done the odds tracking of it. But let's take one of the golf tipster now, Lyons. Now, he's the golf trader. I believe he's the golf odds compiler at Boyle Sports.
He is, yeah. I think so. Yeah.
And has been much publicised of late. He's had 3 winners. He's had 100 to 1 winner at Oddschecker, 50 to 1 Jake Knapp. That's right. And then 30 to 2 Scotty Scheffler. Big wins, right?
Yeah.
Big shout about. But we've been tracking him back to July 2022. And even with those trio of wins, over 1,150 bets. Do you want to know how many points profit he's made?
That, I'm going to guess 20.
No, 10.5 at an ROI of about 0.5%. So that's not knocking Niall, right? We don't know. That goes to July 22. It could be that the first 6 months of 22 were fantastic, or 2021 was unreal as well. And, if you look at his performance over a bigger period, he might be at an ROI of 20%. Quite easily, with golf. I think he's had a few playoff losers and seconds at big prices, and we know better than anyone the pain of a playoff loser at big odds. Let's not talk about that though. But it's not knocking Niall. He's part of the the ecosystem there, and you flagging these tips is great. But do people know you might actually be following him for 20 months and actually make nothing? And he's taking early prices as well. This isn't like Wednesday afternoon prices. This is like Monday morning, beer the bang. Golf market's up. Let's go and take the early prices with these firms. So it's not great.
Yeah, this is where anyone listening will say, well, you would say that because you work for the SBC. But personally, I would rather pay, even if it's just like a relatively small fee, to a tipster who's going to release tips with their customers in mind. So on a Wednesday or even later on a Tuesday, just so you can get the prices and they're going to be fair with odds settlement and stuff. I mean, that record, what did you say the ROI was, Pete? 0.6%, 0.5%?
0.6.
Yeah, so that's going to be with relatively standout prices, I guess, as well. Yeah. I'm not sure if he uses like general market prices, but yeah, there needs to be more transparency, especially if they're going to charge for it. I think that changes the dynamic with their customers. We've talked about Sporting Life in favourable terms before, haven't we? Because they do publish everything. We might not be a massive fan of all of the early tipping and stuff, but we do acknowledge that they've got like very detailed records on their website. So I think Oddschecker really have to do that if they're going to be charging £10 a month to customers. It just seems like common sense.
Yeah, and like say take Hugh Taylor, he publishes records, he keeps a record. And I think it's fair to say the default stance is if you find a tipster that's putting up bets for free and they don't keep a record, or they're published, promoted by the Racing Post, any of these things, and they don't keep a record, just your default stance is they're not actually good enough to follow. Just bear that in mind. It might not be the losing, they might be winning, but you just don't know. And those ones that it kind of goes into more of a conversation about these free tipsters. So let's take someone like Steve Palmer. I really rate Steve Palmer as a golf tipster. His Racing Post golf chat each week and his tips, I check out. I enjoy. But I can't get a handle on his actual profits and loss figures, right? So someone posted he's made a profit out of something like 20 out of the last 25 years. So that's fantastic if he has, but what's the number behind it? And what's the figures? What's the losing runs like? And Steve is obviously a good guy. I think he's an expert at it and he's probably got a good ROI, no doubt, but it's guesswork. And then there are others not like him who put up their bets. And the problem is for these tipsters, if they keep a record and they're not actually that good, the gig's over, isn't it?
Yeah.
They aren't going to get paid by whichever website it is that hosts them if they're not making a profit, or if they've not made a profit in the last 6 or 12 months. Who's going to follow Tom Segal and think, oh, he's no good, he's lost it? Well, actually, it could just be variance, or it could be he's not actually that good.
I mean, I'm guessing the person who's doing the social media and stuff for Oddschecker, it could be anybody. It might not even be someone who's got a massive interest in betting, but they do always seem to kind of appeal to our recency bias. And like you said, then they're very, very quiet when they have a losing run. Everybody likes to win and everybody likes to celebrate when they win, but it needs to be contextualised within a wider record. Otherwise, it can just be luck. I could tip up a golfer next week and it could win. It doesn't make me a good golf tipster. It could just be pure luck. So
yeah,
I have to take these things all in a round, I think.
Exactly. And I think the advice I'd have is ask them if they have a record. Some of them do keep a record, like Daryl Carter keeps a record. He'll share that with you. Other people keep a record, so they will share it. And if they don't and they're not forthcoming, well, what are they trying to hide? Why aren't they bothering? If I am betting on anything, I want to know what I'm making because I take it seriously. They should do the same too.
Make sure you ask them when they last reset their P&L as well, Pete. It's really important with some tips as that.
It is another one. That's the joke that keeps on giving, isn't it? Yeah. Talking about jokers, let's move on to... No, that's a tough one. Well, I mean, we'll get into it, but Jeff Banks, the bookmaker, not the clothes designer. I don't know if you remember the clothes show. Yeah. Jeff Banks, everyone's least favourite bookmaker. I'm going to hand over to you here before I say too much because you've been using him and you want to tell the listeners about what's happened.
Right, so a little bit of context. We did a lot of work last year on a small independent firms, and part of that list was Jeff Banks. My early work on him suggested that they mirror Bet365 prices, which was quite useful. They had some nice concessions and stuff on their site, so started using them. Placed 3 bets really early on and got an email pretty much instantaneously saying you're restricted to board prices. Honestly, it wasn't anything too sharp either. I think we're talking like late morning. They all lost. Hey-ho. Took my money back out, forgot about the site, just completely ignored it. A couple of months later, I think one of our members was asking questions on Twitter about Jeff Banks, and I said, mirrors Bet365 prices, but I will warn you, you get limited very quickly. And to his credit, Jeff sent me a message and saying, what's this? Like, what happened? So I just said, here's my username. And he lifted the restriction and said, don't know what's going on there. So I started betting with him and took some early morning prices and took some prices which maybe might have been bigger than elsewhere. So was expecting to be restricted at some point. And like we've talked about in the past, I've got absolutely no issue with that. Wasn't taking like the absolute mickey. I wasn't placing like each way multis. I wasn't trying to win more than like 500, 600 quid at a time or anything like that. So nothing too egregious, but received an email a couple of weeks back. And I think to give it some context, I do need to read part of the email. So basically said you're going to be restricted to board prices, which like I said, not a problem with me. But part of it after that, it said the reason, and it said, Jeff Banks strictly prohibits the use of any automated betting systems, bots, softwares, scripts, or any other mechanisms designed to exploit betting odds, prices, and or with the capacity to give customer or a syndicate of customers an unfair advantage. Jeff Banks reserves the right to void any bets or transactions found to be associated with the use of such automated tools or methods, without any exceptions if we discover or have reason to believe that a customer has violated the provisions of paragraphs. Now, I've got no issue with being restricted, but this kind of read as like an accusation that I'm using some kind of scraping software, or I don't know how it all works, to be honest, because I've never done it, but some kind of odds tracking software that I don't know what it does. The reason I bring it up is Jeff's done this publicly with a few of our members as well. So I've seen him accuse other people of doing it. I don't think it's right, really, to be accusing people of doing that. For me, that's immoral, what he's accusing us of doing. It's a form of cheating in my book. If I'm going to beat the prices and if I'm going to beat the SP and he doesn't like that and he wants to shut me down, zero problem. Everybody else does it. But to pretend that he's different from the rest of the firms, or to kind of not hide behind, but use this kind of accusation to remove customers like me, I don't think it's going to sit very well with people. And I don't think it's right. One last thing, Pete, before I stop my rant. I was also told that I'd beaten 95% of my bets shortened immediately after I bet them, which I'm sorry, but that's just not true. The majority would have beaten SP, I'd imagine. I've not got figures for that, but I would bet my life that 95% did not shorten immediately. And I would also bet my life that 95% didn't beat the SP. So, yeah, that was a bit silly as well to throw in all these stats that are just completely nonsense. But just thought I'd bring it up, especially after it's happened to a couple of our members too. But any thoughts? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that, like you say, we talked about this before, and if someone's going to restrict you, that's fair enough. Especially a smaller such as Jeff, but just be straightforward about it. Just be like, yeah, you're taking your sharp stuff. You're too sharp. You're too much of a winner. You're too much of this. I can't handle this action. We understand the market. We get that. But to not actually say that, but to say, but you're doing this and you're doing that, you're using bots, you're beating the market 95% of the time, you're doing all the accusing you or directly saying it's this. That's not correct. That's not the right way of doing things. And it's right to call him out because, we are fans of smaller bookmakers. We are on the same side of them. We've had a Dragon Bet, AK Bets, have been exchanging messages with Christian White of MacBet. We've promoted or highlighted Ostlers and Kaluki, a lot of these smaller firms, and we're advocates of them. We look, support them. They're often trying to do the right thing. They'll try and lay you a bet and support them. And then similarly with Jeff, you're not trying to take advantage, but he doesn't make life easy for himself when he deliberately basically misconstrues the point and just gets you back up straight away, isn't it? He's like, You're not being straight with me, you're not being fair. And you think he's telling porkies about what you've been doing. And we just want a straight answer. We can handle the straight answer. What we can't handle is a load of bullshit.
Yeah, I'm loath to have a go at a smaller bookmaker of some of the things that we were mentioning earlier, how hard it is to lay, especially on horses.
Yeah,
it's just leaves a sour taste, really. I'd much prefer to be told, you're beating the SP too often. Sorry, but we're not going to take any more cash from you unless it's on the 10, 15 minutes before the off. Absolutely fine. You wouldn't hear a peep from me. Yeah, just one of those things. We'll see.
I think as well, Jeff isn't everyone's cup of tea. I think you separate the man from the bookmaker. The man, from all accounts, is particularly unpleasant. The bookmaker, fair enough. You've got to have his respect to be a bookmaker in this day and age and do quite well. But it's a two-way street. And whether this is like a automated or a standard message they send out, it could be. Or whether this is just something that they're quite aggressive with these kind of accusations. I don't know, but something to consider on that front. So let's talk about BetDAC. Shall we get into BetDAC? Or do you want to talk about betting exchange balances disappearing out of people's accounts?
I was hoping, Pete, we were going to up the mood of the show by talking about chasing steamers because I feel like I've been on a downer so far. Okay. I want to talk about something nice.
This is a good news story. Okay, bad news out of the way. Good news, chasing steamers. Now, this is something I wouldn't take with a small bet bookmaker because you're going to get gubbed straight away. If you haven't read about chasing steamers, do check it out. I think we reviewed them. We did some pieces on them in November, the videos and all kinds of information. Yeah, I've been using this for a while and I'm able to get down. And basically it highlights movers. So let's say Pinnacle slash the odds on a bet on, it could be a basketball game. I find that to be quite good. And it goes from like 3.0 to 2.2. Or, it might be a handicap or something like that. You go and get it on quickly with a soft bookmaker before they move the odds. Now, you take that bet and you take that with a big firm or whatever, and you're eventually going to get cut. That's fine. It's part of the game. And it's been performing outstandingly well. And if you are somebody who's willing to play that game and willing to bet into all these markets and take advantage of it, it feels bad saying this after we talk about independents. We're not hitting them. Go take the profits off William Hill or Bet365. They're making billions. They're really good angles. So if you are looking for something, I can really recommend. I've been using it kind of my team and it's doing really, really well. And it ebbs and flows again, your ups and downs, but we've had a few really good weeks that have just made a real chunk of change to get 2024 and make up for some of the golf losses that we've endured.
Stop mentioning that.
Okay. Let's go back to a downer because you wanted to talk about balances disappearing out of someone's account.
Yeah. Now, this comes about because the professional bettor, I think he's a professional bettor, isn't he? He's definitely a professional poker player.
Joe Beavers.
Yeah. Joe Beavers posted something about one of his associates and having funds go missing from one of their accounts. Now, he pointed out that it was an exchange, but it wasn't Betfair.
Mm-hmm.
Ender Kendrick from BetDAC was also on that thread, and there was confirmation between them that it wasn't BetDAC either, so that leaves a couple of suspects.
Dun, dun, dun.
We should open a book on this. We should open a book. 5 to 6 to pair.
Yeah.
So within that thread, he was talking about how tricky it's been for them to get the money back, how problematic it's been to deal with the customer service. Now, that's a case that we can't speak to because we don't know the ins and outs of it. We don't know the people involved at the far end. But it reminded me of something that came up with one of our associates, Pete, somebody that we both know quite well.
Yeah.
So back in, I'm guessing September time, got a message in the morning saying, have you ever heard about Betfair balances going missing? And I said, no. I've heard odd little bits and pieces, but nothing too detailed. And what had happened is our associate had logged out and then logged back in the morning, and his funds were completely gone. My understanding was that the person who had managed to get into his account had bet it all on like slots and stuff. So it seemed to be very malicious rather than anything fraudulent, like backing and laying on a market and trying to get the money out that way.
Yeah.
In fairness to Betfair, I'll get to somewhere where they weren't very good in a second, but in fairness to Betfair, they did sort this out for him within 3 days. I think he wasn't very happy with some of the semantics of the way they were talking to him. So they framed it as a goodwill gesture, returning his money to him.
Yeah.
Whereas it really was their fault that the money had gone missing in the first place. But along the way, he had emailed in and asked for a ledger of what had happened the night that somebody had got into his account. And instead of sending him his ledger with his name on it and the list of bets, he was sent a ledger of another Betfair customer with a different name on the account and a completely different set of bets.
Wow.
Now, the reason why this is important in the wider discussion, I think, is these are the operators that we're being asked to share our banking details with and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So there's two major concerns. One, that money's going missing from accounts, and especially exchange accounts by the sounds of things. And secondly, these people don't know their arse from their elbow in looking after our money that's in there already, never mind anything more complex. So, yeah, I thought I'd bring that up. I'm the downer on the show this week. I'm bringing up all the things that are going to depress people.
Even one or two instances like this are concerning, and you like to think it's very isolated incidents, but when, it's as a goodwill gesture and they're sending you the wrong data, like what is going on there? Like, come on. Like, we have to trust these organizations to oversee delicate financial information about what we can and cannot afford. Like, it's a total dream world to think that the people that we're dealing with are going to be better than a bank who have everything in place to check on the funds coming in and out of your account and are incredibly well trained and on top of this kind of thing, especially with large sums. So yeah, it's preposterous, the idea that we're going to put this into the hands of untrained individuals and companies, especially when, how is this information going to be monetized as well? That's another discussion, but yeah, it doesn't provide you confidence in how they're set up. Because this is a big firm. You'd like to think, you might hear this from a smaller firm, perhaps, who don't have the same systems in place, but a big one, I mean, they should have a methodology or a structure in place to prevent this kind of stuff.
I mean, if they'd accidentally sent him back my golf record, he would have had a heart attack. He would have thought, I've lost all this money. Right. Yeah, I've brought it back around myself. I think that was the first day I'd properly met him. Like, we were chatting that day and he was like, oh, my money's just all gone missing. I'm like, I hope he's not accusing me.
Yeah.
Hacking into his systems or something while we're chatting away. But
if you were a Scouser, you'd accuse you. If it was me.
Well, if the cat fits, worry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about BetDAC as well, because we've done some pieces on them lately. Last time we did these episodes, we had Ronan on from Matchbook. And since then, we've also been speaking with BetDAC, and Ender is our contact there. Now, in the interest of transparency, we did ask Ender or anybody else from BetDAC if they wanted to come on the podcast and discuss this, offer to pre-record it, whatever they might need. But for whatever reason, they weren't able or willing to do so. So we'll try to do our best to put forward their case and answer questions for them. But just as we did with Matchbook, we talked about how volume and liquidity is being shifting away from Betfair and there's more on Matchbook. And they are being on the front foot trying to engage on-course bookmakers and big players to come and join Matchbook. And by all accounts, their customer service is very good. I've seen a lot of people commenting and saying that it's top-notch and really impressed by the communication, especially when they're leaving Betfair. And BetDAC trying to do the same. They're trying to engage people, say, come and join the BetDAC exchange and they've got some offers, haven't they, mate? And they're trying to get as many people to go. It's under different ownership than previously. I think it was part of Entain previously, and they're trying to do everything they can to be an alternative to Betfair, because no doubt they see the market is ripe and people are ready to leave and are leaving Betfair. So yeah, do you want to go through the offers they've got and some of the bits and pieces about their enhanced value special offers and stuff as well?
Yeah, so in terms of general offers, 100 days commission free, and 100 days after that at 1% commission on winnings. That's available through the SBC site. That's for everybody, by the way, not just members. The difference for members is if you've currently got an account with them and you want to backdate that offer, you can get in contact with Ender and he'll implement that for you. One of the massive positives, something that we've shared with members ourselves, is the enhanced specials. So they're charged at 0%. So that doesn't matter which customer you are. If you've been with them for 5 years, if you're a big punter, you'll still pay 0% on those. They're kind of like the gateway that I think BetDAC are using to try and get customers through the door. As you'll have seen with places like Matchbook and sometimes on Betfair, you'll see that match bettors like to go onto your Skies, your Paddy Powers, your William Hills. They find these bets which are ridiculous value. And despite them being ridiculous value, they still lay them off to guarantee lock in their profit. So what that means is they're often value even when the match bettors are laying them off. So that's a nice little way to build up a little bit of a bank. One thing I thought looking at their site, the liquidity isn't as deep as it is with Betfair, obviously. But for most punters, I mean, if you're a £20, £50 punter, you'll get your money down. I also saw Peter Webb of BetAngel talking about this recently. Last couple of days during Cheltenham, he said that the queues to get money down was a lot shorter at BetDAC, which was an advantage for him. It's worth having that extra option, I think, isn't it? You don't just want to have one. You can have 2 or 3 different exchange options like you would with bookmakers. And they'll be good for some things and maybe not for others. But what do you think about it, Pete? Have you had a look?
No, I haven't actually. I've been using Betfair and Matchbook, but that is on my radar because it's one there, especially when you're looking at exchange volume and you know if you're limited to say £500 a month, you got 3 exchanges or even 4 if you chuck into markets, then you got £2,000 there you can play with on a monthly basis in theory, which can help you with drawdown and variance. So that's good. But I really liked what you did. You did the video with Tom from Bookie Bashing where you benchmarked some of the prices that they're doing on the specials and how you can back them on BetDAC and take advantage of some value there. And that's a really good entry point to that. You've done that work for SBC members to take advantage of it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring it because just using Matchbook and, for example, on golf, although because I'm not really betting on the racing so much myself, unlike you, I'll often find, especially on the PGA, the markets are the same. So if I'm making 0% or a lower commission at Matchbook, I might as well take the bet there than take it on Betfair. And it's the same, I just sometimes find Matchbook's easier to pull up and find the market that I want. And I've got funds in there or I'm paying a lower commission. So just for me, the more choice you have, the better it is. And then when you've got these enhanced specials that you can find some free money if you've got the time effectively. The one thing I did want to talk about, and I wish I had someone like Matthew Trenhale to properly explain this. So this is my theory, right, about exchange as well, because I've seen some of the comments and, I think Matchbook's liquidity is provided by, let's say, a big punter or a group of big punters, right? They say they're not seeding the market, but I'm not so sure. And it could well be that there's some big punters that are providing the liquidity in that. So effectively, you're betting against them if you're betting on Matchbook. Now, on Smarkets, they definitely use their own trading arm. It's called Hanson Trading, I think, like the boy band. And if you look at their last finances, but you look at their last financial report, it shows you, or last few, it shows you that's very profitable.
Yeah.
Because they're basically betting onto their exchange and taking a big profit. And I asked Jason about this, Jason, who runs Markets, and he didn't deny it. He just basically said it's business. So I think that, again, if Trenhale was on or someone like that to talk about the ecosystem, but I think it's a delicate balance. So if you are a really, really big punter or big profitable group or whatever, and you're making 6 figures on, a Matchbook or a Smarkets, they're probably not going to like that. I don't think any firm would if you're making 200 grand and paying 4 grand for the privilege or whatever the commission might be. They're going to like, oh, hang on. The board's going to look at that and go, that's out of whack. And the Betfair's got its premium charge.
They let me get away with it, Pete. That's all they charge me in my dreams.
Is that right? Okay. You get to that stage where potentially you have this exchange dominated by a few really big players who have every advantage and the bankroll and every technology and what have you. So I think there's a delicate balance from an ecosystem point of view, from a business point of view. So BetDAC, I think, is more of a true exchange. So it's me backing, you laying. You're not going against a big trading arm. You're not going against a big punter or big punters. You're going against generally other just general punters. Now, probably there are some market makers and seeders, but not like It's not this markets firm. You're not betting against markets on markets, which is a problem for me, but I understand why they do it. It's profitable. Why wouldn't you? If you run markets, you'd probably do that. Of course you would. I think just to be aware of that and have someone to come on and clarify if I've got that incorrect. Well, that's my theory at least. But for most punters, if you're just a general punter making a bit of profit, then you're not going to have a problem. But if you're a really big winner, I think that's when the conversations will have to come in if you're using those exchanges.
Yeah, the point you made there about the difference between maybe, say, Matchbook and BetDAC, in reaction to our chat with Ronan and the piece that we put up on our site, I did get people reaching out to me directly by DM on Twitter or in our threads with Ronan, saying that they do see their own markets and that they restrict winners. Ronan replied to those people under those threads and said, that's not true. So we can only go on what's been said publicly. I don't think we've got an inside track into Matchbook to say whether that's true or not, but we've got to take Ronan at his word. He's been very forthright with us, but people are hesitant about using Matchbook and they do feel that they do see their own markets. That's something that I've read dozens of times. So yeah, that's something that is in the public domain and people can have their own opinion about. So
exactly, yeah. Who knows? And it's all guesswork, isn't it? But I think the point is the ecosystem's got to be protected on the exchange, otherwise it can easily go out of sync. And so you will see those people who are big winners and they'll probably have complaints, although they won't be on the same terms as you and I, for example, who might be betting at smaller amounts. So yeah, that's that one. And I'd love to get Matthew on or someone like that who understands the dynamic of these systems and can communicate that better. If we got a chance, I also wanted to just got a member email and I wanted to go through it because I thought it was quite interesting actually. Well, it's a couple of minutes before we finish and I won't put out the guy's name, but he sent an email. I thought it was quite good. So he said, hi Pete, I've been betting semi-professionally for 2 years now. Almost all my soft bookie accounts have been completely restricted. I am thinking about making the big step and trying out Pinnacle and betting agents because I can't access any exchanges in my country. So he'd probably be using bet brokers where they'd be legal in his country. My humble inquiry is how best can I select tipsters that can beat the Asian markets and how do I scale? At the moment, I have a bankroll of $30,000. I'm eager to hear from you. Go on, Josh, what would you say to this particular chat?
So first resource, 5 stages of profitable betting. The first couple of stages, it sounds like this member's already gone past, obviously. And those tipsters and those resources are probably going to be less than useless for him because he's not going to be able to get on. So you're moving on to stages 3, 4 and 5. So I'll be looking at services that are calculating true odds. So things like bookie bashing, things like SIS analysts that you mentioned earlier, or we talked about earlier, where they're playing very late into the exchange. You're looking for services that you can bet into liquid markets. So yeah, it's looking towards those tipsters that we've detailed on the Exchange and Sharp bookmaker tipster page, where not sure about the number, Pete, maybe 30 services that are very specifically designed for this kind of punter. They're very, very different from what he may have used before. I'd say be careful because you've really got to get finely attuned to betting with those things efficiently. I think I found out last year that certain strategies, the timing is really important to when you employ them. So yeah, maybe paper trade a few of those services and then try and build up. It's building up your knowledge more than building up a betting bank or anything else at this stage. It's about getting something which is repeatable. Rinse and repeat, as they say. It's quite hard to do, but what do you think about it? It's a hard stage, isn't it, to change your mindset and to do something different?
Yeah, because normally it'd be like a process. You'd go through and you would gradually introduce these elements with other stage 2, like bookmaker ones, and you'd introduce some of these. So you'd build it up organically like that. So it wouldn't be like stop and start, like it sounds like for this particular chap. In terms of jumping in, yeah, I would agree you don't want to. Generally, you're going to make a lower ROI, so you have to stake more, right? And you want to get a lot of volume down. So you're betting a lot more, your turnover is high. 30 grand might sound a lot, but it might not go as far as you think it will. And also, you need to become used to it. So I definitely think trying it out paper trading or just starting small. Don't think about 30 grand. Think about, can you make a profit from a small chunk of it? And does it work for you? Do you get a sense of how how the market is? If you've never used brokers before, and you're not familiar with some of the terms and how they operate and, putting a request in for a price or, using the exchange and how to bet in and when to bet. But not just that, but obviously the psychological and the patience required and the approach to it, then it's worth taking your time to build that up. Because if you come from a point of view of betting each way lucky 15s with a bookmaker, like that's really easy wins, right? You don't really have to think too much about it. You just plug them all in. And
it's automatic, isn't it? Yeah.
do as many as you want. And there's a variance aspect to it, which is part of it. And you probably have to learn that to make it successfully. But you don't really have to work too hard for that in the actual bet placement itself. Whereas with the other stuff, you actually have to do that. And it really becomes a quest to really know the best outs and the best places and use your bankroll wisely. So take it easy and don't rush in, even if you have done well early on. The best way to do it is to just go through gradually. So start doing piecemeal bits as you're losing bookmaker accounts and build it up like that, because then you can do that organically at the same time. So yeah, there's a good question, because we get these about how do I shift? I've lost my accounts. How do I shift across? What's the best starting point? And everyone's slightly different, but there's lots of different options there, like you say, available to you. And the game isn't over, as we always like to say. If Bet365 have closed you down, you're just one of a million, or however many people they've closed.
Yeah, it's nice to end on a positive as well, Pete, because I feel like I've been all doom and gloom today. I'm normally the happy one, so that's a really nice message to receive. I think that'll be helpful for people as well.
Yeah, and if you've got a question that you want to have us answer in a future pod, we'll try and do one of these every other month, if not more frequently. And it's just a good chance to go over some of the, when we get enough topics that we think are of interest to get into, we want to do this and try and give you a point of view from the industry without any, maybe that hasn't got the exposure it needs. So we're talking about, maybe BetDAC, talking about Oddschecker, or even independent bookmakers. So if you have a question, do drop us the line. If you like these pods, please do leave a favorable review in any of the podcast directories. And of course, you can always join us if you're interested in what we do and the work helping people make money betting, usually through tipsters, but tools and systems and everything else includes like bookmaker reviews. Then you can come and join us at the Smart Betting Club. So Josh, hoping for a better form and fortune over the last 2 days in Cheltenham. The first 2 days have been favourite heavy, and every mug punter in the world has been laughing at me. So I'd like to think Thursday and Friday we'll get our revenge.
I think so. I like the racing on Friday. I'm not sure about tomorrow yet. I'll have a look, but I do like the racing for Friday. So next time you hear from me, I'll be pants off. I'll be very happy. I'll have had a golf win at the weekend to roll it up as well. So
let's hope so. All right, Josh, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch you soon.
See you, mate.